This is AndyTube, and this is the Singer Model 457 that I've been doing some videos on. I did the gear change video, and I did the needle bar video, and I did the feed throw out system. So I was going to start dismantling the machine more to do my type of cleaning with the crud cutter and everything, but I was playing around with it, and I hooked the pedal up and was running, and so proud of my new gear, and I noticed a little bit of binding. So I just would turn it by hand, and there was a point where it just felt like the machine would bind a little bit, a little hesitation with something. So my first thought was that I had pressed the gear and the shaft too hard together when I put in the new gear. And I oiled everything to make sure, but I thought, well, that's a possibility. So I just went in and I loosened the set screw on the gear so that the upper shaft here would make the gear rotate, but it would just spin on the vertical shaft, and it wouldn't turn anything down here below. And I still had the binding. So I said, okay, it's not my new gear installation that's causing the binding. So I put that together. Then I just came around to the front end to start dismantling, and I took out the pressure bar system and stuff, and then I ran the motor again, and I could tell this little hesitation when I was running it slow. And then I started to hear a little click or pop intermittently, not every time. I could run the machine for a minute, nothing, and then all of a sudden I'd get like a little click, click, pop, 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 like that. I'm not sure how to describe it. But anyway, I said, okay, well, I've got to find that noise, and I've got to find this binding. And most of the time when I start taking stuff apart and kind of testing the machine as I go, I realize, hey, the part I just took off, now the binding is gone, or the noise is gone, And to be honest, I really thought it was going to be the take-up lever system here, because it goes right in to the needle bar crank here. See, if I turn that, you can see the hole where it goes. One end is anchored here, and the other end is anchored up in a hole that's right in the body. And it's like the two-piece system, and then the crank comes down to the needle bar. Well, the needle bar can bind it, so I had taken out the needle bar, and I still had this binding and clicking. And I thought for sure the binding was going to be in the take-up, because I've often found that it's too tight, it's installed too tightly, or it's so full of gunk it can't move freely and it binds. So I took that out, and I've still got the binding. I have the hand wheel off and everything, but turning it by hand, no matter how much resistance, if you still have the motor belt on and stuff, and if the machine's fully assembled, no matter what the resistance is, it should be even when you turn the hand wheel. It should just be the same amount of resistance of the parts. But this one, at a certain point, right here, when I turn it, it just wants to hesitate and bind, and if I get through that, then it's easier to turn. And it's the same point, and that's why I thought it was the take-up. But while I was playing around with it, I found what's causing... Boy, that was a long way around to tell you. Sorry. I found what is causing the little popping or clicking sometimes. And that is because there's too much play in the horizontal arm shaft. Now, this end of the shaft goes through the body and ends in the needle bar counterweight. And right there, that silver disc in the center, that's the end of the horizontal arm shaft on the needle bar end of the machine. And that shaft runs through all the parts in the machine, and it ends up right here, and then the hand wheel counterbalance is screwed right into the shaft, and then you can mount the hand wheel. So that horizontal arm shaft, I can't even get it in the frame here. It's the longest shaft on the machine. It goes end to end like that. And when I was taking off the take-up lever, I could see it's moving. I'm going to move it now, and you might hear the click or pop. Oh, maybe you won't. Let me see. Hear that? So, hopefully you heard that. And what's funny is that the sound comes down from this end. And that's what fools most people. The sound, the play feels like it's down in here. But look, when you put this counterbalance for the hand wheel on, there's just a screw. It's reset in there, and it screws that counterbalance right to the end of the arm shaft in there. And that's the only place it can be attached. Period. So you can't, it's always like the right place, the right spacing down here. But if you pull on the hand wheel, or in this case the shaft, you hear, this is kind of where you hear it. But if we, let's see if I put this up a little. If we take a look in here, I don't know if we'll be able to see this stuff moving. Yeah, I'm looking in the screen on the camera, and I can tell it's moving. Okay, but here's the deal. Here's what's wrong. This is like a collar that goes around the arm shaft and butts up against the bearing or bushing where it goes through the casting. And this oil port is how you oil that bearing, that holds the weight. And it's got like a little bronze sleeve, I think it's bronze in there, and that's where you put the oil. So this collar is to like hold the arm shaft in place, because you can't do it up here on the end. Like on the hand wheel end, you've got that counterweight that's screwed in. Well, this counterweight's attached to the very end, but this collar, and I'm not sure if that's the right name to call it a collar, but it's like onto the arm shaft, and it's supposed to just butt up here so that there's no play. The arm shaft doesn't move horizontally, but that's where I'm getting the play. And it doesn't look like much, right? Can you see what where's my pointer? Can you see what I'm talking about? This space right here. See the little black line? It looks like that's a space. And that there shouldn't be that much play. So this collar is not in the correct position. And I don't know if it's because it's worn, or if somebody had adjusted it before, or if somebody had pulled out the whole arm shaft for some reason. But I've got to get that collar back over against the bearing so the machine doesn't do that. Makes sense, right? So there's 2 set screws on the collar, and that's what I have to loosen. And it's basically just going to be that I loosen these 2 set screws and I nudge or tap that collar over against the bearing. And what I'll do when I go to retighten it is I'll push on the needle bar counterbalance there at the end of that with my thumb to push that in properly so that counterbalance is up against the bearing behind it. And then I will hold that in place, and then I will nudge this over against the bearing and retighten it, and that should eliminate the little clicking and popping that I heard. So now these can be in here very tight, and usually you're going to find that they haven't been loosened or anything since the factory installed it. So be sure you have a well-fitting screwdriver. That's why I use these hollow ground. Some people call them gunsmithing screwdrivers, but they're like a hollow ground point where the point isn't tapered. The point is more flat as it comes to the end, where like a regular screwdriver, see how this tip is tapered. It just gets narrower and narrower and narrower as it comes to the point. And the hollow ground is not. It stays. Sorry, I got caught on my shirt. The hollow ground stays flat. So that's your best chance of getting a really good fit and not stripping out the head of the screw. But you don't want this to turn because you're pressing down so hard to keep the screwdriver from, slipping out and hurting the screw, that it might have a tendency to roll on you. It might move a little bit like that while you're trying to loosen it or tighten it. So I usually take my fingers like this and hold on to the needle bar counterweight. If you want to work from the back, you could hold the hand wheel, if you have your hand wheel on, in your left hand. Or if you're left-handed, you would hold the screwdriver in your left hand. Your right hand, you could hold the hand wheel. But the idea is to hold it steady while you're turning the screwdriver. And then there we go. Once you kind of break it free, give it a couple turns. By no means do you have to take it out. And there's 2 of these because there's not a flat spot on this shaft. It's round, so that's why there's 2 set screws to hold, at that angle to keep it from turning. So we got the one. Let's go in here and we'll get the second one here. Oh, it's a little harder, but there it goes. Okay, I'll turn that 2 or 3 times. So, let's see if I can just do it with my... It's a very tight tolerance. Let's see if I can put a screwdriver in here and twist it. There we go. Do it a little more gently. I just want to show you how that collar is just slid on to the arm shaft as the machine's being assembled. and it'll go all the way back to this part of the casted frame. But in our case, we want it to go all the way forward. Let's see if I can just do it by hand here. Get it up there. Yeah. See if I push it back. There's still that play. There's not much. So if I get it up here, I have to get it up firmly against this bushing so that there's no play. Let's see if I how do I want to do this? I rarely have to do this. Let me see if I put a screwdriver on this flat spot, if I can just tap it up there with my little 2-ounce jeweler hammer. Okay, I saw it move a little bit. Okay, now I'm pushing on the needle bar counterbalance and it's not moving. Let me try and turn yeah. Okay, I think that's all it took. It wasn't far off. I don't know how it got off because the screws are real tight. I don't know if it's just wear on the end of the collar. It's like the collar has a little sleeve in it too, kinda. But anyway, let's. I can't fully rotate it now because the set screw hits the frame. That's how close everything is here. But let me get my screwdriver and I'll tighten these up almost completely tight. Let me just turn that in gently. Turn the other one in gently so I know that they're both up against the shaft. Then I will tighten this one pretty good. And I'll tighten the other one pretty good. And then I'll test it. And if the play is gone, I'll tighten them up. And I certainly don't want to press this or pound it so hard to the bushing that now I'm creating binding right there. Right? You just want it fully engaged so there won't be a... So let's do my rotation here. Yeah. Now I'm going to try and yank the arm shaft back and forth. There's just a little tiny bit of play there. I think I could actually, yeah, I think I could actually get that closer. I'm always a little nervous about putting them too hard together, this metal on metal thing, and then I've created binding. And to me, it's hard enough. Everything the motor has to turn in these machines, the whole cam stack and the worm gear and everything up front. Then it's got to go down and move the feed, move the hook, everything like that. So the less binding, the better you can adjust things to move freely without excessive play. Then the better the motor will run, without straining, and the smoother the machine will operate. Okay, so let me move that back again just for the heck of it. Yep. Okay. Now let me move it up. Push it up there with my screwdriver. I'll rotate it 180 degrees and push that up there. I'm just hitting it with the palm of my hand. Now I'm going to put my fingers on that needle bar counter balance and I'm going to push towards the hand wheel. See, and I think that's what I forgot to do last time. Let's see if I can be sure and push on that counterbalance and use my screwdriver to push that collar up against the bushings. I think that's why I still had a little bit of play, was I didn't push on the counterbalance to hold it while I was pushing the collar forward, because I had the screwdriver in one hand and my hammer. My third hand is still in the shop this week getting work done. So this time, since I remembered, I pushed on the counterbalance with the fingers of my left hand over here at the front end, pushed on that counterbalance and just held it in place while I pushed on the collar with a screwdriver to get it up where it belongs. So now I'm going to snug that up and try it, and now if it's good, then I can tighten it up. Okay, so let's see how we did now. I'll go down here and yank back and forth on that counterbalance for the hand wheel. It's not budging. Okay, so it's not moving or clicking. None of these parts are moving anymore. Nothing was moving down here. See that? So let me just rotate it and make sure I haven't added any binding. And I have not. I still have that weird little binding right in that one spot. So I've got to find that. But at least now I've eliminated the play in the horizontal arm shaft. And you don't want play because that affects the meshing of the gear with the cam stack gear, and it affects the meshing of the new gear I put in on the top of the vertical shaft, and it affects where the forked feed connection attaches to the arm shaft up here. That's good and tight now. Let me get this one good and tight. So even though it wasn't a big amount of play, it was affecting the machine because I could hear it, right? I could hear this little pop kind of bouncing sound. I don't know, if you ever have play there, you'll recognize it maybe. Just want to make sure these are evenly tight and completely tight. Now, okay. Let me wiggle it again. No play. Alright. So that is how to adjust and eliminate play in the horizontal arm shaft, or the main horizontal arm shaft. Some guys called it the alpha shaft. But when you test it out, remember, you may hear the noise here on this end, but this end really doesn't get adjusted. Because, like I said, the counterbalance screws right into, see that screw right there, screws right into the arm shaft, so there's no adjustment. That's the place for it. That's the only place it can be. And that's why, I guess you could almost call this the adjustment collar, is up here on this end before the front bearing. Thanks for tuning in and watching another of my videos. I hope it was interesting to you, and you will come back. As I dismantle more of this now, I'm still trying to figure out where that play is, and I have an idea, and I'm pretty sure I can find it. And if and when I do, I'll make a video of what I found was binding a little bit. Thanks. Hope to see you next time, and take care.